Today, Korg came out with a new iMono Poly app for the iPad. I am Nu-trix, the Synth guy. Welcome to today's edition of iPad Synthesizers. I own a lot of Korg apps. I have the iPoly 6 and the iMono Poly that I bought today. First I thought I could just go into Gadget and say add the app that I already own from Korg, which is the iPoly 6. Now if you go into the iPoly 6, very cool, very nice. It's a very cool synth. The Poly 6 from Korg is a cool app, but it doesn't integrate into Gadget. It's autonomous and it works well with a keyboard, MIDI, whatever. But the difference is that when you look at the Poly 6, it also comes with 2 synthesizers with 2 sequencers and a drum. Each of the sound being the whole synthesis of a Poly 6 to create one sound. So you have a Poly 6 for the kick, a Poly 6 for the snare, a Poly 6 for the clap, and so on. So really powerful if you are a synthesis freak. The Poly 6 is really cool. Now, this is not what came out today. Now, today, Korg announced a new synth, which is the Mono Poly that runs with Gadget. And my last EP was done entirely on Gadget. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to add a Mono Poly, which is something I really like. So if you have the iMono Poly, now we're going to look at the standalone version. You can also have it in Gadget if needed. Now, it's a very cool synthesizer where you have very rapidly, if you go around it, you've got the first panel. It's a synthesis panel. So everything you need to control in the synthesis, you've got VCO 1, 2, 3, and 4. The 2, 3, and 4 oscillators are exactly like the first one, except the fact that they have a tune, okay? Then you've got the VCF, which is the filter, cutoff resonance, envelope, intensity, keyboard tracking. So basic stuff you get from all these synthesizers. Then you got the envelope for the filter. Then you got the envelope for the amplifier. You got noise level, pitch band, output panning. That's basically the synthesis. Now you also have this part here, which is the pulse width modulation, the pulse width, and cross modulation. So the way you combine these frequencies together, and also the frequency modulation. These two MG1, MG2, these are modulation generators, so LFOs and LFO2, the shape that you can control, the speed you can control, you can have them in sync. So right now they're in sync with tempo. If you go into this little keyboard, then you've got control over the keys. You've got the keyboard that appears. You can, if you want, have the chaos pad control. Again, it's if you like this. I'm not a chaos pad fan. I prefer having keys to play with. And then you've got this thing here, which is, I would call it effect. You can actually switch that bottom part here, which is basically portamento, detune, transpose, the voice as allocation, how many voice for the unison, you know, stuff that is more generic. And then you go here, you can flip it and have access to the effects. So when you have access to the effects, you can actually say effect 1, and you've got like 19 different type of effects. If you used any of the Korg synth like the Poly 6 before, it's basically what you know from the Poly 6. These are the same type of effects. Where this synth becomes really powerful is when you go into the cable little, you know, choice at the top here, and then you can assign any source of modulation to any destination. So if you go source, you've got all these different sources of modulation. You can use, say, noise. I want to use the noise, and I want to send the noise to all these destination of modulation, to the pan pot, for example, and how much of it I want it to affect. So you can hear my sound going left and right. So it's really powerful. You've got 8 of them. So it's for that. If you really like synthesis, this is really cool. The fact that you can assign 8 of them to a destination, really powerful. I prefer having these keys. So I go into Bluetooth MIDI in the let's say the settings, and I say I want to scan my Bluetooth MIDI controllers, and I want to connect to my Roland A01. That's it. So now it's connected. So the other controls you have here, you can decide which type of controllers controls what. So it's just to adapt to the way you're gonna use with a controller. So let's close this. Now I know that most people will say, okay, how does it sound like? So let's go through some of the sounds. There's a ton of sound that comes with it. So it's really interesting to see what they have. It's a really nice sound. Maybe too loud, sorry. Let's try one with, because I really like arpeggiators, so arpeggiators. Let's go into Gadget, and yes, and oh, I need to install it. So I need to install it back into. Now it's installed. Do we have it? Okay, we'll play. Let's add this thing here, and then. You know that if you double click on this, you get the full screen. But this is just synthesis. Then go play. You can switch between the different sections. So let's stop this. So right away you know that this, if you look at this screen, you've got the whole screen. So you go from synthesis to amp to effect. Now synthesis, you can switch between the 4 oscillators with this screen. Now I know some of you will say, well, why don't we get the full screen? Is that the fact that they decided to have this little screen here and the rest for controllers and the DAW is really interesting. At the same time, you know that this screen here is actually what you see on an iPhone. So this is exactly what you have on an iPhone when you want to switch. You've got the voices, the VCOs here. you've got the amp, you've got, sorry, the amp and the effect. So all the stuff we saw on the iPad and the full screen, you have in a small screen on the iPhone also. And again, you've got a list of the same sounds, whatever you want. Let's what. I really find that Korg has found a way to make cool sound, and I'm not going to go into fighting against the fact that I would rather have a real analog synth. Of course I would, but if I don't, this is a really cool thing to have, you know. Of course I would prefer to have the real mono poly synth, but if I don't have it, this is really cool, especially for, I don't know, like less than $30. Come on, this is a really cool. And if you don't believe that you can do electronic music that sounds electronic and not computerized, well, listen to my EP and tell me what you think. Because my last EP, go on Nu-trix.com, and the EP is called The Mobile Session of Nu-trix. It's 4 songs, and they were entirely made with Gadget. Of course, not with this synth because it wasn't available at the time, but entirely made with Gadget and mixed in Aria Pro. I will actually do another video where I'm going to explain my workflow between Gadget and Aria Pro and other things I do with Gadget. So until next time, cheers.